Three. Hey, what's up? This is Wilsfer and Reza Mills. Back again, as promised, we're bringing you our top five Killing Joke songs. And yeah, so this one was hard because there's so much, not only stuff that they have out in breadth of discography, but stylistically, it goes from heavy industrial to punk to new wave and everywhere in between. I'm going to predict that we're going to have some different songs here on the different sides of the spectrum. I'm kind of going for some of their more melodic stuff, as I think that that's, I guess, more endearing to me because I like to hear that side of normally aggressive bands. So, yeah, what you think?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I've tried to mix things up a little bit, but yeah, a very difficult band to decide which songs to go for. I actually got into them at uni. I had a mate who actually bought one of their CDs. Funnily enough, it was Pandemonium, and I was really hooked by that. And then he got the self-titled debut, which I'm going to say from the upfront, isn't my favorite release out of all of them. That's probably the one I don't really listen to. Not because it's bad by any means, but I don't know, it doesn't quite hit me in the same way. Maybe it's because it's been overly featured and overly covered. But yeah, very pioneering act from the mellower stuff to the darker, gothier things. There's a bit of even synth work on the very controversial, I think, was it called Outside the Gate, I think, record, metal, everything, industrial. So a pioneering band who really traversed all the genres. So I've been looking forward to this. Should be a lot of fun.
Cool. All right. Well, how about you get us started?
All right. So, as I say, we're not featuring anything from the self-titled debut at all, but I am going to feature something from the 1981 album, What's This For? So, this is all in all caps for some reason, and then dot 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 exclamation mark. What's this for? So, yeah, so the second record, I think it was far more I feel like it was far more interesting and far better crafted than the previous debut. Almost, I've heard one reviewer describe it as almost post-metal in some places. It was the beginning of their tribal era. It's really, really bleak sounding. And the record song that I've gone for is the opener, The Fall of Because, which is probably like the darkest track on the record and really sets the tone for what's coming. And especially kind of this whole record, what's going on in the world, etc. Really kind of, it's just hitting the notes for me at the moment. So yeah, the Fall of Because with that amazing sort of use of space and Big Paul's incredible tribal drumming. Yeah, really, really hits the mark. So that's my first choice, The Fall of Because.
Cool. I mean, that's obviously a great song. I mean, I like all the earlier stuff, even like the first album. But I mean, there's like you say, there's so much stuff. I mean, these guys have 15 albums, so there's a lot to pull from. So I mean, I appreciate that. I like the I think some of that earlier stuff to me reminds me of kind of like you can hear a lot of like looking back now, you can hear a lot of that influence in particularly that album that you mentioned, in like crust punk.
Yeah,
I
sure.
guess that some of the bleakness, some of the like the tribal drumming is very neurosis.
Hmm. Yeah, and even later bands like Amebix and Prong and people like that,
Right.
definitely seem to pick up a few tips from these lads. So yeah, that's probably the earliest I'll go with Killing Joke. As I say, the first title, I don't want people to listen to this and think that we're slating the self-titled debut from 1980. Not at all. It's all about personal preference, and I think we're both pretty much aligned that it's not the
Right.
best record. They just would do much more interesting things later on.
That
So,
is correct. That is correct. And so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. I mean, and I'm still going to, my first two picks are from the 80s.
mhm.
Obviously, my first one is going to be from the Nighttime album. It's not the song that you would probably think it would be,
What would that be, perchance?
even though I do like that song a lot.
Yeah,
This one is a little more driving, and I'm going to go with Multitudes,
nice. Yep.
which has kind of a chug. I remember the first time I heard the song, the guitar part reminded me of Dr. Feelgood a little bit.
Oh God, yeah.
Um, yeah, but I mean, the vocals are obviously more depth and complex than what Vince Neil does, and it's way darker.
Well,
Um, which can be said of that whole album. And I think a lot of people just kind of label that as like, oh, that's their goth album just because of the song. But
yeah.
they still, even in the span of an album, they still cover a lot of ground. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I think it's probably the first and maybe only time that they would get any kind of true chart recognition. I remember them featuring on, I've mentioned Top of the Pops before on this podcast. And, that song, Love Like Blood, featured on Top of the Pops. So it's certainly their most commercial. But again, I don't want people to think, oh God, commercial, Top of the Pops. No. It's an excellent record, and that song in particular, just typifies how good it is. Proves that you can be accessible slightly and still have enough integrity and depth and power, which these guys certainly did.
Right. It's about doing it your own way. And I think that
Yeah.
they certainly accomplished that. All right. What you got next?
All right, so my next choice comes from 1984, and it's actually a standalone single. And I've got a couple of reasons for this. Well, one major one actually. Uh, you know, I know if you know, lots of people have seen me moan endlessly for the past few days. My roots are in Iran. I'm very patriotic about that. And I'm a Brit as well, of course. And this song kind of for me typifies, when that dirtbag got taken out. I really felt that this song felt very typical, somewhat, at least the title did. And the song's called A New Day. And I love this. It feels. The video's super cool. I mean, Geordie for some reason is all in blue. I don't quite know what that's about, but probably the weirdest he would ever look. And the song again, it's quite anthemic. And I'm actually reading a review here by someone called Muriel Gray, who wrote in a terrible magazine called Smash Hits, that it's a very dated guitar riff and he calls them little bit guilty of being pantomime punks. Well, Muriel Gray, you're dead wrong because this is a cracking track. And also, I recommend checking out the B-side Dance Day as well as the dub mix of A New Day. And also the producer on this single, Chris Kimsey, I think he would go on to produce a couple of albums that they would do after this. So it definitely has hints of what would come on the record that you just mentioned before. Yeah, that's my next choice, A New Day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that song's definitely kind of like marks a transition period for them.
Hmm.
Because they'll ride this kind of more new wavy uh slant for, a few albums, and then things definitely start changing in the 90s for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's a lot brighter, even sounding, I suppose, technically. I mean it's definitely not heavy, but it's got an emotional we talk a lot about this on this show about an emotional weight to it. It's just something about the chorus, it feels so catchy. And yeah, I just love it. I think it's a really underrated little tune. And as I say, for people who are looking for it on an album, you won't find it. It's a standalone single. So
Right, right.
cool.
For sure. So my next pick, I'm gonna jump one album ahead from where I was to the Brighter Than a Thousand Suns
Mhm.
album.
Yeah.
And it's another, I think that's the kind of theme we're touching on here. Is this one's another catchy one. For me, I think it's the catchiest song on the album. That's why I made this list. And that's Twilight of the Mortal.
Hmm. Yep.
And yeah, I mean, it still has kind of a melancholy feel. The production on this album feels bigger, I think. And so the vocals stand out a little more. There's some songs where he later on in their career where he kind of falls back into against the guitars a little bit.
Mm.
But I mean, this is not maybe not as accessible as a another song I have on here, but you know, I think it's melodic enough to appeal to people that might just think the Killing Joke is just one thing, which,
Hmm.
a lot of people just associate them with the weight. I mean, that was certainly my introduction was through Metallica, so
Yeah, of course. Yeah, on the what's it called? B- is it Damage Garage Days
yep.
Revisited? Yeah. Yeah. And interestingly enough, I mean, you mentioned metal, that's kind of hinting on metal. One of the producers for the record was a guy called Chris Sandarides, I think it's pronounced Sandarides, who worked with a lot of heavy metal bands. So yeah, there's kind of a well, somewhat spurious connection, but one nonetheless in that sense. So yeah, great album. I'm very very fond of it. Actually, it's probably up there as one of my favorite Joke albums for sure.
Right. Yeah, I
Um,
think so. All right, what you got?
all right. Well, as I say, as always, we great minds think alike, and I've chosen a number also from Brighter Than a Thousand Suns. But this time I've gone for I think it's the opener on the record. Let's just double check. Yeah, it's called Adorations. This is beautiful. And I think what we associate jazz with normally is kind of he's this weird guy who, has a very aggressive style. He's kind of, dressed, he got the war paint and everything. And but honestly, his voice is incredible on this. It's the melodies, it almost reminds me of bands like the Chameleons. There's a lot of atmosphere on it. It's it could almost feature on a John Hughes flick in a way. It's just so beautifully melodic. And again, that's what I love about these guys. And interestingly, when you're looking up the genre tags, post-punk, new wave, cold wave is also mentioned. I think that's like a branch of sort of post-punk and what have you. And I think it hits the nail on the head there. It's just such a beautifully melodic, heartfelt piece. I definitely recommend if anyone's like, oh, droid Killing Joke, apocalyptic dark, blah blah blah, One Trick Pony, play him this song because it will blow your nuts off.
Right. And, I mean, it's interesting, and I'm not sure I would imagine it was similar, the current um feel for things was in, 1986 in England. But I mean, when you
Mm.
look at the cover for the single, they almost look like Crowded House or something like that. Um,
Yes, they do. I'm just looking at it now. Yes.
So, and that was like, it was like a marketing style. And I think everybody kind of that was playing this type of music, as in not metal. Obviously, if you were metal, your hair was up. And, by 1986, I think everybody was pretty much, even Iron Maiden had softened their look a little bit away from like leather and stuff like that,
Mm.
which I think happened in the punk scene too, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah. I mean,
Which
look at
interesting enough,
Discharge.
like we've talked about, there's that 5 year mark.
Yeah.
So we're starting to shift away from some of the tropes of the 80s and to, you know,
Mm.
move into other directions.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think that definitely, I mean, Killing Joke played by their own rules, but they still music isn't created in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Um, so they were obviously aware enough to kind of shift with the times. But it was in an organic fashion. I never felt like they were just jumping on a bandwagon.
No, no, I never felt that. And also, I guess. After several records of, fairly dark, apocalyptic, tribal stuff, they thought, well, you know, we kind of enjoyed the success of Nighttime, a little bit of adulation, a little bit of attention at last. Why not continue in that vein for a bit? Let's see where we can take this and how far we can push it. Unfortunately, I mean, Nighttime will probably be the only time that they would, as I said before, come to mainstream consciousness. So I think this record probably did absolutely nothing chart wise, sadly, but it certainly continues that more melodic trajectory until they started to get back to the heavier, darker stuff again.
Right. But I think that the important thing is that when they got back into the heavier, darker stuff,
Yeah.
they had already gain those more melodic chops, so they were able to apply them as like an undercurrent to that.
Sure.
Which plays into even my next song, which is from the 1994 album. So we got a little bit of a jump here.
Hmm.
Pandemonium, which is actually the first album I bought by these guys. And the song I'm going with is Jaina, which
Okay.
is probably one of the more melodic songs on the album, I would say. Because I mean, the album's pretty bombastic. I mean, they were kind of coming back to show bands in 94, like Ministry and Nine Inch Nails,
Mm.
that they were who they were. So, not that, I mean, not that I don't think Al Jurgensen would ever question that,
Oh, sure.
because Ministry is definitely influenced by Killing Joke. But,
Yeah.
I think the audience tends to think, okay, Ministry is doing this thing that is so groundbreaking. Nine Inch Nails is doing this thing that's so groundbreaking. And I guess it was in the sense that Van Halen took a sound and, you know, to me, Van Halen's always been like Thin Lizzy, just marketed to frat boys in California. So,
Sure.
they took what they did and, produced it in a way that would solidly align with what they had already been doing.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah, I think it's a great record. I didn't choose anything from it, but um, as I say, this was probably one of their first records that I remember hearing. And also, I think some props need to be given out to the fact that, you know, I think Helmet covered one of their songs. Obviously, nothing from this album, but I can definitely hear sort of what Helmet were doing around the time. Maybe that sort of more, I guess, post hardcore noise rocky touches.
Hmm.
Um, it is obviously an industrial-ish sort of album, but I can sort of hear maybe Killing Joke was sort of looking around and sort of thinking, oh, okay, it's 1994. It's been 4 years since we put out a record. Maybe we should just, see what else is going on. But again, they just seem to have this unique ability for doing that, a bit like Bowie, I suppose, in a way, and just making it their own sort of thing.
Right, right. I think that's pretty true. They just kind of read the room.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great record. Good choice.
Cool.
All right, so I've skipped ahead even further now, and I'm gone way up to the 2006 record, Hosannas from the Basement of Hell, with the amazing album art, which apparently it's from a painting by a guy called Victor Safonkin, and it was entitled Inhuman Rearing. So yeah, you can sort of that's obviously quite appropriate for a band like Killing Joke. And I think it was the last album ever really to feature Raven because he had sadly passed away the following year. And yeah, this is a super heavy record. It's pretty bludgeoning. Again, it sees them getting really into that whole apocalyptic tribal thing that we'd come to expect, but with a more metallic edge. And the number that I've chosen from it is a track called Invocation, which it's almost like I almost feel like it's sort of their version of Kashmir because they were very influenced by Led Zeppelin as well. It has this very grandiose string arrangement and that steady, threatening build up, which you're like constantly waiting for that final explosion. Keeps you on the edge of your seat, in other words. So, yeah, that's my choice. Invocation.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I can see that one. And I mean, I think everything from like Pandemonium on, I've liked. Surprisingly, there's a lot of different, even within that sphere, there's a lot of different colors and textures,
Hmm.
you know. And although they don't necessarily do it with that song, there are still some songs where you can hear some of the more like new wavy type
Hmm.
guitar tones and stuff like that, which I always think of when I hear like that kind of reverby
Hmm.
um guitar tone that like I mean The Cure uses it some. I want to say that band Icehouse uses it too, but they're a little more on the radio rock side of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's that kind of ringing, clear tone.
Well, that's
Not
Geordie's.
necessarily the jangle, but it's, they hit those power chords and let them ring
Yes.
out.
Well, that's Geordie down to a T, really. I mean, at the same time as like being really bludgeoning and heavy, he's still got this amazing sense of melody, and in a way that you've just done a great job of describing. So yeah, so props up, and I still, I mean, grief might be a bit of a stretch, but I still miss him, and obviously, I just think he was such a an asset to that band.
Right.
And
That's
even,
why I never want to have a Killing Joke reunion because
I know.
you just can't do that.
You can't, I mean, okay, I don't want to be mean. Like, if it was sort of youth that had sadly passed, okay, it would be a loss. But, okay, there'd be other people. But Geordie was so, I mean, he was the only guy to stick throughout the band's history. People came and went and what had
Mhm.
you. He was sort of like, well, I suppose he was Jazz's muse in a way, his songwriting soulmate. So yeah, just irreplaceable.
Right. And I can't really see Chaz wanting to do that either. So
No, no. Rest
there
in
we go. There we go. Well, my next one, I'm only moving up a couple years. I'm gonna stay on Democracy.
hmm.
And the song I picked does kind of have that new wave feel to it in the guitar parts, and it's just another one of the like super catchy melodic songs. I'm gonna go with Lanterns,
Hmm.
which a little more obscure, but I think it's um I don't know, stands the test of time for me.
Yeah, it's really funny with this record. I have to do it again, much like when we did you chose a cut from I think it was Outside from Bowie, or was it that record? And I sort of said I've never really properly ventured into it, or Hours it might have been actually. With this record, it's kind of the same. I've never really given it a proper listen. It's probably one of their only records that I don't really listen to for some reason. So I'll need to do a lot more digging. I have a feeling it's a little bit more getting into alt rock in a way. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
uh,
Just some,
what
I mean, it could be described as that. I hear
yeah,
it as kind of new wave package for all rock audiences.
cool. And that's interesting actually, because I don't know if you remember these guys. There was a New Zealand band called Sheerhad,
Mhm.
which Jazz had worked with, which had that kind of amalgamation of sort of industrial and alt rock. And I kind of feel like it feels sort of very mid-90s. In other
Yeah.
words, that kind of vein. So yeah, I should probably dig into it a little bit more than I have done, to be fair, as ever.
All
Do some
right.
homework.
Cool.
Cool.
What
All
you got
right.
next?
My next and final choice would be a track called Lord of Chaos. And it was really the very last thing, I think, to be put out by the band. Certainly the last thing to be featured by the late, great Geordie. This is just a tremendous. It's an EP, first of all. And you got like a dub remix. There's another song on there, another new song on there. But the title track itself, it is. Oh, it is so infectious. That whole riff again, you could say, well, it's a bit minstrel-ish in some ways, maybe, but it is monstrous. It's so heavy, and if I hope that before a year or so, whenever the time might be, that when I shuffle off this mortal coil, I could put out something as brilliant as this, like what Geordie put out. I mean, what a way to bow out with an EP and a song like this. It's definitely, I would say, them at their heaviest. And anyone who knows me knows I'm not necessarily the biggest metal guy in the world. I do like it, but this this to me is how great metal can be at its finest, and how well crafted it is, and the bleakness of it, everything about it to me just spells brilliant. I would have bought it. We have a shop here called HMV. I don't know if you guys have it, but the EP was sort of like 30, 40 quid. I was like, there's no way I'm picking that up at that price. But should it lower in value a little bit, I'll definitely be adding it to my collection. So that's my final choice, Lord of Chaos.
All right. That's a good one. I mean, I have a DP and I thought that it was, a sufficient
Mm,
way for them to bow out, you know. It kind of showed all the different sides.
mm. And
So
what cool video as well.
yeah, that is
A
true. That
demonic
is true.
clown jester type figure that they have going on. So
That
yeah.
is correct. For some reason, none of those newer albums made it on mine. As current as I'm gonna get is the 2003 self-titled album.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and we've talked about accessible songs, and I think that this is more accessible even than some of the other songs that we've mentioned because to me it sounds a lot like kind of like it could have been written in the middle of the grunge era,
Hmm.
even though they didn't put it out then. And I'm gonna go with "You'll Never Get to Me,"
Okay.
um, which I think the Jazz's voice sounds great, and sometimes for all the bombast and sonic heaviness that we can have, sometimes I just want to hear somebody write a fucking song.
I know.
And
Yeah. A
and I
hook
think
wouldn't
that it's
go amiss.
important that they just kind of, for me, for my ears, they just kind
Sure.
of proved, oh yeah, you want something like a 90s grunge hit? Well, this could have been it.
You
But
know,
we're
it's
doing it
funny
our
that
way.
you mention grunge there. A man that everyone who knows me again knows I'm not exactly a big fan of. Mr. Grohl is featured on this record. He actually drums, and to give the guy credit, he does a good job. If only could translate that to writing some half decent tunes with the Foo Fighters. But there you go. Yeah, great record and a comeback for them because of course they'd been disbanded for what at that point 7, 8 years. I
Right.
think. So yeah, it's pretty much a very cool statement. And I think if I'm not too mistaken, Andy Gill from Gang of Four was gotten involved in some of the
Yeah,
songwriting too.
I'm trying to think what he did on, he added some guitar,
Hmm. It just
mainly
doesn't
like
seem
the
like a
feedbacky
likely fit,
parts.
does it? Andy Gill, writing punk funk sort of inspired the Minutemen, playing on a Killing Joke record, but
I mean, for what he does, I can kind of hear it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
think he's probably not on that song. I think he's on maybe the first track. He
yeah.
could be on. I like the song a lot, Loose Cannon. Like when I was
Hmm,
going back to kind of give some of these albums a second listen, I was like, oh, wait, this is a good song too. So I had to choose the You'll Never Get to Me song over Loose Cannon, but it was those were neck and neck. Loose
sure.
Cannon's a little heavier.
Yeah. I think they even would do it, don't they do a version of War Dance as well? I think.
That was a bonus track.
Yeah.
So
It
you can count it or not count it, but yeah.
wasn't bad. It was okay, I
Yeah,
guess. Maybe not the most essential thing in the world, but it was
right.
all right.
The opening track was pretty good on this
Oh,
album.
yeah. Yeah, it's a killer
That Death
tune.
and Resurrection show.
Did you ever see that documentary about Killing Joke?
No, I haven't. I'm sure it's on YouTube and I need to
Yes.
get around to it. There are just so many music documentaries. I need to set
I
aside
know.
one night a month I'll watch one.
Well, with that documentary, it's excellent, but obviously bear in mind that, jazz especially is into all that shaman stuff and babbling on about, the forces, the elements that brought us together and
Mhm.
all of that, which, okay, fine, but it is really, really well put together and very, very interesting. So yeah, definitely, definitely put it higher up on your list of to
Yeah,
watch.
I'll give it a listen. Did I ever send you that interview that I did with Jazz?
No.
Okay.
Oh, was that on
I'll
your
put it
on
in the
your
link to this description. I just did it for back when I was writing for Cult Nation.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, me and him went on a long tirade about the occult.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Definitely have to put that list. I
I'll
mean,
put a
I'm
link to it.
again, he's one of those characters. I mean, I think he's fascinating and a really intelligent, interesting guy, but I'm also sounds kind of silly, a little bit intimidated by him because he's obviously quite serious about what he does. Obviously, doesn't suffer fools gladly. I don't necessarily agree with some of the stuff he says. It goes into slightly conspiratorial sort of stuff, but you know, at least he's not boring, right?
Right.
So yeah, interesting chap. I'll have to give that a watch for sure.
For sure. Yep, I'll put a link on it on the description here.
Cool.
But yeah, so I mean, it's definitely fitting that that we hit Killing Joke this week with everything that's going on in the world. I think Ministry
Mm,
next week that'll be
wow.
also hit similar
Get ready for
nerve.
the new romantic
Right,
represent.
yeah. It'll all be just the first two albums.
Yeah.
It'll be
Oh,
the Depeche Mode years.
oh God.
Um,
Yeah. Sure.
that and then we'll get super apocalyptic or as apocalyptic. It's hard to say who's more apocalyptic, Ministry or Slayer. I guess it's a
Hard on
different
set.
version. One's more biblical than the other.
Yes, of course.
Um,
Well, you know what? I'm sure that Al's a huge Slayer fan.
you're right. Yeah, he has to be. At least his guitar players are, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, and I know that he was a big fan of the first SOD record anyway. I'm sure I read
Right.
that and you can sort of
And I also I also interviewed Al Jurgensen,
Mhm.
but it was for when he was doing that whatever Meth Machine album.
Math Machine.
Remember he did a weird little side project in like I want to say it was 2016.
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah.
So many projects.
I'll post that one when we do Ministry, but
Hmm. Please do, yeah.
yeah, 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 for sure.
I tell you what I really like of his, actually digressing, of course, from Killing Joke, is that weird, really weird country-ish kind of project that he did. What was it called? Buck Shooters or something, and 666 or whatever
Right,
that
right,
thing.
right.
That was a really funny but oddly effective record. He nailed it. I can't stand country music personally, but I think he did a brilliant job um, with his, late guitarist. Um,
Right, yeah. I mean, he was definitely super into country music. He was telling me. I mean, he said it was influencing, everything back going all the way back to Revolting Cocks.
yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, fair dues.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, that's going to be an interesting one to do with Ministry. I mean, disclaimer, I guess, of sorts. I think there's going to be a certain 20-year period of his work which will not be featured. I think you know which one I'm
Right.
talking about that I'm not the biggest fan of. I don't care about politics, whatever. You think, believe what you believe, but just from a musical level, that I didn't find that inspirational. But um, his early work is especially absolutely fantastic. So that's going to be a lot of fun also to dig into that one too. And I'm kind of
Right,
glad
sure, yeah.
they piece
I
with it.
mean, I probably
Oh,
won't. For all fairness, I won't have any of the Depeche Mode stuff. I don't probably not.
I love that record. I think it's and I love all the little singles and EPs around it. That's why I was so stoked to be able to review the Squirrely years. So that was right up my street. Imagine,
Yeah, I mean, it would be easy to kind of figure out the eras that I will touch on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's next week. We'll hit that. And this week, I guess to sum it all up, there's a lot more to Killing Joke than you might suspect if you just are gonna judge them by the industrial days or their punk rock
I
years.
actually just wanted to just very, very quickly, Will, sorry, just to squeeze in, you say a lot more to judge than just the heavier stuff. Everyone check out the very first EP, Turn to Red, because that thing is bizarre. It is almost dub reggae for the most part. So yeah, if you want to know how diverse this band is, listen to that thing.
Right. And I think too that, it's interesting. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation of the influence that dub had on that era of kind of post-punk.
Yeah, it's basically the Slits in a sense, because I know Youth was a huge fan of that stuff, and it definitely brings that influence in. So yeah, but again, it works. It's done in the right way, as with the Bad Brains using dub. These guys do it well when they
Right.
touch on the odd occasion.
For
So,
sure.
cool.
All right. Well, I will see you next week, and you guys like and subscribe and do all that stuff, and we'll see you next week with Ministry.